welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. I was in a bit of a quandary today because my internet is out, and normally I use a reference image from online for doing my 10-minute paintings or longer paintings. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? What can I paint without needing a reference image? So I thought, okay, I would do just a bit of a tutorial about several different ways that you can paint pine trees with watercolors. So you can kind of see it here on the table, have a few different styles of pine trees. I use a variety of different brushes. One thing I did forget to mention in the video, so I'll point it out here, is that I'm using 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I always use cold press, and a 140-pound weight is ideal. So that's that, and I do mention it in the video, but I'll also mention it here really quickly. I do have supplies that I would recommend listed in the description. They do include paid links. As an Amazon associate, I do earn a commission on qualifying purchases, so please be aware of that. But again, they're supplies that I would use anyhow, so there's that. And let's see, before I get into the video, there we go, I would love to share my website with you. It is CoreyFrankCreates.com. It's the best way to get in touch with me. When you sign up for my weekly email newsletter, you get access to my free no-brainer watercolor supplies buying guide. I know there's a lot of supplies to choose from. It can be overwhelming, so I just have this one-page document that can help you make some purchasing choices for supplies to start out with based on a variety of budgets. I also have my online art shop as well as my online courses. And those courses are especially ideal for when you are ready to really dive into watercolors, get more comprehensive, starting out with the very basics, beginning stuff, all the way to more advanced techniques. I include all kind of this sort of step-by-step things and knowledge I wish I had had when I first tried watercolors. I have them all kind of encapsulated in those watercolor courses. So when you're ready to kind of really take that next step, go to the next level with watercolors, I'd love for you to check those out. All those things you can find on my website, which is again, CoreyFrankCreates.com. Alrighty, so feel free, this tutorial is in real time. You're welcome to follow along or just kind of watch it a few times and then try the techniques yourself. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so for painting a pine tree, I'm gonna use a couple different brushes today, and I wanna start with the flat brush. This is kind of a mid-size, size 6 from the Artigria set. And again, any materials I talk about today are just kind of general suggestions for materials are linked in the description. I am an Amazon associate, so I do earn a commission on qualifying purchases. Please be aware of that. But these are supplies I would recommend regardless of whether I got a commission or not. So I'm starting with my flat brush. You can see how it comes to this really nice horizontal line here, and we're really going to take advantage of that when painting this pine tree. So I have my water off screen to the upper right here. I'm going to go ahead and get this paint that I already have pre-mixed wet on my palette. I want it to be decently dark, so fairly thick paint. I'm going to dab on my towel, excess water off in this upper right hand corner here. See if I can bring it down a little bit so you can see. There you go, just dab a little bit off. And now I'm going to go ahead and use this sort of perpendicular line here. Pressed a little too hard at the top. I'm almost like right on the corner. I'm not using the entire line. I'm just getting on this upper corner here. And I'm going to create a sort of sketchy vertical line to establish the center point of my tree. And it doesn't have to be a perfect connected line. Actually, a little bit of sketchiness is okay. Don't necessarily have to have it solid. Can get a little thicker as we go down. And then I am going to extend this a little further up top. Go on that side, that point again. So now what I'm going to do, continue using kind of the corner of the brush. I'm going to again, maybe get a little more paint and then blot excess moisture off so it really comes again to that really nice horizontal line. I'm going to go right on the corner here and just start very, very lightly kind of back and forth here, doing just a little kind of dot. Almost like hovering over the paper surface and just creating these itty bitty strokes kind of brushy motions or just little dabs even with kind of a almost a raising up at the end. You can kind of just do that back and forth. And of course, the further out you get, you want to have even a thinner. There you go. This corner of the brush comes to a little bit finer of a point, so it works a little better than this other corner. It's creating too thick of a line. Just this light kind of dabbing motion. You're getting some texture, kind of get a little thicker as you go towards that center line. And I'm kind of doing a little bit of an upsweep with these. For this pine tree, I know there are all different kinds of pine trees. Some have upward sloping branches, some have downward sloping branches. So I'm doing a little bit of kind of an upward slope with these. Since I'm right-handed, it is a little easier for me to do that right side. Get a little more paint. There we go. Really trying to stay on that corner. More brushy strokes towards the center. A lot of dabbing motion works really nicely. And of course, if we want it to be a little looser, I could add a little more moisture. So just to kind of change up the style. So that was really more kind of drier type of brush. But now, if I really just want to make it very light and sketchy, I've got a lot more moisture in my brush. I'm actually doing a little bit more of a downward slant now. So the style of this tree is kind of changing halfway through. And that's okay. I'll do a couple others as well. You could still keep that upward motion if you want. And again, just very loose with it when you're using this more kind of light brushy style. Now with this light brushy style, I would recommend maybe not even doing that center line. Maybe just very lightly. I do kind of want to try and make that disappear a bit so it's not as noticeable. Light dabbing motions. So I may have gotten that center line a little too dark when I initially laid it down, and that's okay. I'm gonna go over with some darker paint here to try and blend it in. There we go. This is the wet on wet technique that I'm using. So where you have a wet surface and add more wet paint. There we go. So you can see the difference between kind of the top half where I was being very kind of more precise with things and getting a little more brushy detail, whereas this loose kind of style, I'll mimic that kind of below for the sort of top edge. So again, just very light, sketchy line right on the corner there. And then now I'm gonna go in with very loose. You can see how with watercolor, it kind of really lends itself to this kind of loose, sketchy style. Quite a bit of water. And then if you wanted, you could always go back later with more of a detail brush. So I have my size 6 silver black velvet round brush. And here I'm gonna pick up some of this paint. And now, if I want, I can really start over the dry sections, adding some details here, filling it in, adding finer lines, pine needles, some branches here and there. If I wanted to get kind of some browns, perhaps, could do little hints of branches here and there. So I do like the tactic or strategy of kind of this loose, brushy style here, waiting for it to dry a bit so then you can go back over with some more kind of detail with a smaller brush, and the round brush works great for that. But again, if you don't want to necessarily do that and just want to kind of have your sort of light sketchy brush to begin with, you can do that. Lots of folks also really like using a fan brush. Now this fan brush I have is very, very old. I actually inherited it from my Grammy. So let's see, I think it's Delta brand, which this is not linked in the description because they don't make, I don't think they make this particular brush anymore, but you can find plenty online. I do like the Princeton brush company. It's pretty decent. So let me see if I can get this brush to cooperate because it is quite old and it is sort of fraying apart a bit. So I know lots of people, especially with like oils and acrylics, really like using a fan brush for pine trees. You can also use it with watercolor if you want. Very light. There we go. It really does lend itself decently to making these pine tree type shapes because it has this sort of easy back and forth already where you can just kind of almost rotate your brush a little bit up, or if you want kind of a downward sweeping branches, can very easily do that. Now I'm kind of running out of some of my pigment, so let's see if I pick up a little more. Get maybe a little better. There we go. And again, I'm kind of going on a lot of these, except for the round brush. I'm using this downward sweeping type motion on the edge rather than, you know, just splatting it and then going down. But yeah, this actually is working pretty decently for getting a very kind of brushy, liney type texture. You can see how we have like 3 very different styles here of pine trees. So you can really kind of experiment with different kind of brushes to get different effects and different styles. But in general, I kind of recommend having a bit of, you know, your center line, kind of very lightly sketching that in, and then going from there, deciding whether you're going to have kind of up sweeping type branches or downward sweeping. And so I'll do kind of one final version here. Let's see. I want to mix up a little more of this color. So I'm going into my sap green, rinse that. And then I'll also go into my ultramarine blue to really tone it down and create a pretty color. Okay. Nice thick saturated color again. And let's see if I go here, stay right on my tip, kind of have a bit of a center line here. Now I can use my detail brush to stay on the tip. Again, like very light, sketchy type motions, hovering over the surface and then kind of pressing down a little harder in certain parts to suggest like thicker branches, thicker kind of pine needles gathering together. And don't be afraid of adding irregularities almost, like, you know, of course, when you see the quintessential kind of pine tree, it is generally, you know, kind of a triangular in shape, but you don't want it to be a perfect triangle. That's going to look a little too unnatural. You want it to look more organic. So I recommend having maybe like a couple spots where it's like, oh, a branch really went out here, and then there's maybe some gapping there where there's not as much kind of branches. So you just create this more kind of natural, organic feel to it. Again, a lot of just loose blotting type motions. Go back and darken things up a little here. Having a little bit of variety in your kind of darks and lights. So where you have some branches that are a little lighter, so more diluted paint. And then others where it's kind of a little darker in sections. That's going to help add sort of a visual variety. Just having fun with it, experimenting with brush texture, shading, light and dark. And then I didn't continue my center line all the way down. Didn't feel like I needed it, but I may, in a couple strategic spots, again, kind of add that sort of darker lines here and there to suggest the branches. And we will call that kind of good right there. Or actually even on some of these trees, maybe even at the bottom, coming back in a little bit with some of your branches right there. Maybe a little sparse down at the bottom. Just kind of whatever you want to do. Whatever floats your boat. And then if you want to kind of add a little bit of a ground to it, let's see, we'll put a little more blue here. Kind of a bluish green. And then add a little bit of kind of a sweeping motion to get it like, oh, we've got some snow here. Perhaps something like that to add some shadow. So those are just a few ways to kind of practice trees. You can see this, I had really light, so this would be another, again, if you start with lighter, more dilute, watery paint, you can always go back, add some more of those details, textures, build up some layers. It's going to add some dimension. Something that's really great about watercolor is it's not about painting every single detail. It's about suggesting enough of detail and texture that our brain kind of fills in the rest. It's sort of the ultimate working smarter, not harder, I guess. So again, you don't want to have to paint literally every single branch. You can see how just that second layer, adding a little bit of dark portions, adding just a couple spots where there's some more kind of pine needles coming off here and there in a few strategic spots, it really just kind of bumped it up to the next level. So practicing that kind of simplicity and then overlaying just a little bit of detail over the top, contrast between kind of some light and dark areas. And yeah, that can get you some decent pine trees. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that and found it helpful. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Until my next one, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. God bless, and I will see you soon.